Not every message begins with meaning. Some begins with static, with rhythms no ear was made to hear, with symbols shaped for minds that never evolved. What if language is not a tool, but a mirror? What if the signals we wait for is already here, coded into the timing of pulses, the silence between stars, and the stories we whisper to ourselves when no one is listening? You are not just hearing this, you are deciphering it. This is the alien tongue, and you are the translator. Welcome back, traveler. My name is Ayta Çertekin, and this is SITU, Silence in the Universe. Together, we listen to the silence and search for the stories it hides. In our previous episode, we stood at the edge of comfort with Inari and stared into hollowness of endless desire. But now we return to a quieter voice, a persistent ear turned to the sky. This is the story of Haken, and of the alien tongue we may already be hearing, but not understanding. Haken had improved his radio, better components, a larger antenna, more precise tuning. The basement no longer felt like a basement. Walls now lined with acoustic foam, ceiling housing a nest of cables, computer screens casting blue light across his face as he worked through the night. 3 years had passed since he first installed that basic step. 3 years of listening, learning, upgrading. He had connected with others like him, amateur astronomers, retired city researchers, radio enthusiasts. They shared equipment recommendations, software tricks, observation logs. A community of listeners, ears pressed to the cosmic wall. Some nights, he would fall asleep with headphones on, static becoming a lullaby. Other nights, he would jolt awake at 3 a.m. with a new idea, a new frequency try, a new signal processing algorithm to implement. His friends had stopped asking when he would move on from this hobby. They saw the intensity in his eyes when he talked about it, the way his hands moved through the air, sculpting invisible waveforms as he described what he was hearing. This wasn't just a pastime, it was a calling. And one day, deep in the noise, he found them, uncatalogued signals, weak, inconsistent, strangely structured. At first, he thought it was interference, maybe a neighbor's device, a passing satellite, a weather's anomaly. But these signals didn't match known patterns. They appeared at odd intervals, disappeared just as mysteriously, and contained structures he hadn't encountered before. Clustered bursts that seemed to follow mathematical progressions. Frequencies that shifted in ways that seemed almost deliberate. A hopeful, expected grin crept across Harken's face, chasing the blue glow of his screens. He knew the signals were likely natural, distant pulsars, cosmic echoes. But the possibility of something more lingered, weak, inconsistent, strangely structured. At first, he thought it was interference. Solar reflections, cosmic interference, some astronomical phenomenon not yet fully documented. But he couldn't shake the idea. What if they weren't? He recorded everything, analyzed the data obsessively, cross-referenced with known astronomical catalogs, applied filters, removed noise, enhanced the core patterns. And still they remained strange, unexplained. He posted them on a forum. The same forum helped him to build his radio. uploaded the waveforms, then waited. While the page loaded, his mind drifted. What would an alien language even sound like? Would they use sound at all? Would creatures from a gas giant communicate through pressure waves in dense atmospheres? Would silicon-based life use crystalline vibrations instead of air? Would beings who preserve time differently use messages that unfold over centuries? Would they have vocabulary, grammar? Would they write poems or only equations? He thought about human languages, how they shape our perception of reality, how some cultures have dozens of words for snow, others for sand, how some languages place verbs first, others last, how some have tenses for the future, while others see time differently. And if they did speak, could we even begin to translate? What conceptual framework would we share with beings who evolved on worlds with different gravitational forces, different atmospheric compositions, different sensory organs? Maybe the very idea of communication as we understand it would be foreign to them. The forum page refreshed. No responses yet. Harken leaned back in his chair. The static still hissed in his ear, waiting, like humanity itself, waiting for a voice from beyond. Here on Earth, animals use dozens of different forms of communication. Some use sound, some use scent, some use color, some use movement, some use chemicals, some use electricity, some use touch, some use vibration. And we, the intelligent species, still don't understand them fully. Dolphins communicate in clicks and whistles. They produce sounds no human throat could make, frequencies that travel far miles underwater. We know they have names, dialects, possibly even grammar. But we cannot translate dolphin into English or Turkish. Despite decades of research, despite underwater microphones and computer analysis, despite training programs and interactive experiments, we still can't tell what one dolphin is saying to another. We recognize patterns, we identify signatures, but meaning eludes us. Prayer dogs makes distinct alarm calls, depending on the predator. A hawk, a fox, a human with blue shirt, a human with a red shirt. They can describe height, shape, speed, direction. Their cries contain information so specific that researchers can predict exactly what kind of threat is approaching just by listening to the warning calls. Yet we still don't know if prayer dogs have abstract thoughts, if they discuss yesterday or tomorrow, if they have hopes or dreams or memories they share. Bees perform dances to describe the location and distance of flowers. A waggle dance, a round dance, a tremble dance, precise angles, exact timings, mathematical correlations to real-world locations. They can communicate the exact coordinates of a food source 5 kilometers away through movement patterns on a vertical honeycomb surface in complete darkness. A language of motion and vibration that conveyed complex navigational data millions of years before humans invented maps. Cuttlefish ripple across their skins, changing patterns in milliseconds, warning signals, mating displays, camouflage, perhaps conversations we cannot even see. Ravens have been observed holding funerals, gathering around their dead, calling to others, investigating the cause of death. They remember human faces for years, teach their young which humans to avoid, pass knowledge through generations. Ants lay scent trails. Mammals mark territory. Birds sing elaborate songs. Plants release chemicals when damaged that warn neighboring plants of danger. Fungi connects vast underground networks that link trees in chemical conversations. We know what these signals do, but we still don't know exactly what they mean. Are they just instinctual responses encoded in DNA, or do they contain subjective experience, thoughts, feelings, perspectives we cannot access? Do whales tell stories of ocean migrations? Do elephants mourn their dead with specific memories and rituals? Do corvids have inside jokes and personal grudges? And all of these life forms evolved here, under the same sky, from the same origin, with shared biochemistry, shared evolutionary pressures, shared planetary constraints. Imagine how much stranger language might be under an alien sun. Hawkins' post began to attract attention. He was nervous and somehow hopeful, but not the kind he hoped for. Comments were harsh, mocking. That's not how alien signals work. Nice random noise, bro. First time using a radio? Another SETI dreamer, thinking of he found ET. Someone posted a meme of a cartoon alien with a caption. Ancient aliens guys has entered the chat. Others piled on with increasingly creative dismissals. But not all of them contained mockery. A few offered brief explanations. One person suggested it was just his neighbor's microwave. Another claimed it was probably interference from a nearby coal tower. Someone else said it matched the patterns of a known pulsar with some atmospheric distortion. Most didn't even look at his data. They had seen too many false alarms, too many excited amateurs claiming discovery. The field attracted dreamers, and dreamers often saw patterns where none existed. But buried beneath the noise, there was one thoughtful reply. Username: Radio Astronomer 92. Profile: Astrophysics PhD student. Radio telescope operator. The comment was lengthy, detailed, and technical. A breakdown of why those patterns were likely natural. Polarization signatures, local interfaces, solar wind fluctuations, atmospheric scintillation, harmonic resonance from Earth-based transmitters. Graphs comparing his signal to known phenomena, mathematical analysis of frequency distribution, statistical model showing how random noise could produce similar patterns. It wasn't hostile, just certain. The human brain is wired to find patterns, Radio Astronomers 92 wrote. We see faces in clouds, hear voices in static. It was how we evolved. Better to mistake a shadow for a predator than to miss a real threat. SETI work requires us to fight this instinct constantly, to question our own certainty, to demand extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims. The comment ended with unexpected kindness. But keep listening. The universe is vast and strange. We need every ear we can get. Hearken read the response a dozen times, studied the graphs, considered the explanations. They were compelling, rational, probably correct. But Harken didn't feel certain, not because he believed the signals were alien, but because the possibility refused to die. Not this specific sickness perhaps, but somewhere in the static between stars, in the gaps between what we understand and what we don't, there might be voices speaking in tongues we haven't learned to hear. He saved the data, archived the waveforms, made notes of Radio Astronomer 92's explanations. Then he put his headphones back on and continued to listen. Even though we struggle to translate the languages of other species, we have made some progresses in decoding ancient human texts. We know Sumerian, Egyptian, Hittite, Urartian, not because we understood them from the start, but because we had enough examples, enough repetition, enough context. Without the Rosetta Stone, a single artifact containing the same text in 3 different scripts, Egyptian hieroglyphs might have remained unreadable for centuries longer. Without clay tablets preserving multiple versions of the same administrative records, cuneiforms might still be a mystery. Translation requires points of reference, bridges between the known and unknown. When scholars first encountered Linear B tablets from ancient Crete, the script remained undeciphered for decades. It wasn't until Michael Ventris realized it represented an early form of Greek, a language we already knew, that the symbols began to make sense. But what if we encountered a language with no connection to anything we know? That's why linguists and cryptographers have developed mathematical tools to recognize patterns that might indicate language, any language, even if we don't understand a single word. We discovered Zipf law, a strange mathematical pattern that seems to appear in all known human languages, a signature of structure, a sign of intent. In any sufficiently large text, the most common words appear about twice as often the second most common word, 3 times as often as the third most common word, and so on in a predictable relationship. This pattern emerges whether you are analyzing English novels, Chinese newspapers, or Russian poetry. Languages also show distinct entropy profiles, statistical measurements of information density and predictability that differ from random noise or simple repetition. And we look for similar fingerprints in the cosmos. We search for regularity, for entropy dips, for patterns with statistical meaning. We analyze the spacing between pulses, the distribution of frequencies, the timing of signals and silences. Because even if we can't understand an alien message, we might still be able to recognize it. Maybe that's what Harken was doing, not decoding, but witnessing. A signal that meant something, even if no one knew what. The community forum had mostly moved on from his post. New enthusiasts start their own discoveries, their own questions. The conversation flowed around and past him. But sometimes, late at night, when the city grew quiet and the static in his headphones seems to pulse with a rhythm just beyond comprehension, Harken wondered if the greatest barrier to hearing alien voices wasn't technological, but conceptual. And sometimes some signals felt almost too structured, like a program running behind the static. Could the universe itself be coded? Perhaps they were speaking clearly, and we simply lacked the capacity to recognize their words. Perhaps communication wasn't limited to electromagnetic waves, or gravitational pulses, or subspace vibrations, or whatever other mediums we might imagine. Perhaps, like the oak tree and the fungal network beneath it, like the honeybee and the wiggle dance, like the cuttlefish and its skin canvas of color, perhaps aliens speak in mediums we haven't even considered. Through quantum entanglement, through manipulation of dark matter, through subtle alterations to the cosmic background radiation, through mathematical constants encoded in the very structure of their megastructures. Maybe they've been calling out all along, and our ears simply aren't the right instrument to hear. Even if we detected a clear, unmistakable signal of an artificial origin, even if we confirmed beyond doubt that another intelligence was reaching out across the stars, understanding what they were saying would present an entirely different challenge. When humans first encountered new languages on Earth, we rely on shared context, gestures, pointing to objects, physical demonstrations, common biological needs. A linguist in an unfamiliar culture might point at water, say their word for it, then listen as locals provide their terms. Slowly, vocabulary builds. Grammar emerges from patterns. Meaning takes shape through repetition and shared experience. But with an alien transmission, we would have none of these advantages. No way to point at objects, no shared physical space, no common biological imperatives, perhaps not even compatible sensory systems. Would a species that perceives ultraviolet light as we perceive color have words for hues we cannot imagine? Would being who navigates by magnetic fields have concepts untranslatable into visual or auditory terms? Would a collective consciousness even have the concept of I or you? The mathematicians Hans Freudenthal once created Linkos, a language designed for cosmic communication, built from mathematical principles that might be universal. Others have proposed using the periodic table for elements, physical constants, or binary representations of images as starting points. But all of this assumes shared cognitive frameworks, similar ways of parsing reality. What if alien minds are organized completely differently from our own? Harken found himself reading linguistics papers, philosophy of mind, cognitive science, animal communication studies, each field offering a piece of a puzzle, but none providing a complete picture. He began to catalog the strangest form of communications humans had documented. The Piranha language of Amazon, which supposedly lacks recursion, a feature previously thought universal in human languages. The sign languages that emerge spontaneously in deaf communities, developing complete grammatical structures within a single generation. The click languages of Southern Africa, using consonants no other language family employs. The native Hawaiian language with only 13 letters and a focus on vowel sounds. Cultures whose languages don't use relative directions terms like left and right, but instead always refer to absolute directions, north, south, east, west, requiring speakers to maintain perfect orientation at all times. Languages that don't distinguish between blue and green, others that have a dozen words for different shades of blue, some that have no dedicated words for numbers beyond 1, 2, and many. Others with grammatical structures that encoded information about the source of knowledge, whether something was personally witnessed, heard, second-hand, or inferred. Human languages alone contain such diversity, such different ways of carving up reality. Alien communication might be unrecognizable as communication at all. Maybe the silence in the universe isn't silence at all. Maybe it's language, strange pattern just out of reach. Maybe the course of stars is filled with songs, and we are the ones who haven't learned to hear them. Perhaps someday we will discover a pattern in the cosmic microwave background that shows clear signs of artificial manipulation. Perhaps we'll realize that pulsars with their impossibly precise timing are not natural phenomena, but ancient navigational beacons left by a long-vanished civilization. Perhaps we'll find that what we thought was stellar noise contains mathematical sequences too complex to be accidental. Or perhaps we'll detect something unmistakable. Prime numbers, mathematical constants, self-referential codes, the clear signature of mind reaching out. And when that day comes, we'll face our greatest challenge yet, learning to speak a truly alien tongue. But Harkan already understands something important, that the act of listening itself, with patience, with openness, with the humanity to recognize our own limitations, is the first step in any conversation. That sometimes hearing requires more than ears, it requires imagination. In our next episode, we will take a step further from physics and deep into thought itself. Could the silence be programmed? Could the universe be a simulation? We will explore simulation hypotheses and what it might mean if the silence is not natural but coded. This is Aytaç, this is SITU, and together we explore the silence in the universe.